All Skylar Green wanted was a small gift for her grandfather. Nothing fancy. Nothing expensive. Just something thoughtful, something that would make him smile. She'd had her eye on a simple leather bracelet, worn brown, no branding, no gemstones, just a hand-stitched band sitting quietly in a corner display at Hollingsworth & Sons, a high-end men's boutique nestled inside the upscale Lincoln Market Plaza in Denver, Colorado. That bracelet had been sitting there for weeks. Most people walked past it without a second glance, more focused on the designer watches and gold cufflinks displayed under brighter lights. But for Skylar, 15 years old and fiercely independent, it meant everything. She had spotted it 2 Saturdays ago while riding her bike home from her part-time job at the public library. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near a place like Hollingsworth, not with scuffed Converse sneakers, a patched-up backpack, and a worn denim jacket. But curiosity had pulled her in anyway, just for a second. And there it was. The bracelet reminded her of one her grandpa used to wear when she was little, one he'd lost during a hospital stay last year. It wasn't worth much in money, but it was worth a lot in meaning. So Skylar made a decision. She would save up. Skip extra snacks after school. Help neighbors rake leaves and shovel snow. Keep track of every dollar and dime in a little notebook she carried around in her coat pocket. And now finally, on this chilly Saturday afternoon, she had enough. The bracelet was within reach. But the respect she deserved wasn't. Skylar had counted the bills twice before she left home, $78.25 exactly, carefully stacked in an envelope she tucked into the front pocket of her jacket. Her shift at the library had been a long one. She'd spent most of it helping a group of second graders pick out picture books, then reshelving an entire cart of novels, and cleaning gum someone had stuck to the underside of a table. By the time she clocked out, her legs ached, her fingers were sore, and her breath came out in little clouds in the cold Denver air. But she wasn't tired enough to go home yet. Not with that bracelet still waiting for her. The boutique was 6 blocks away. Each step closer filled her with quiet anticipation, like she was walking toward something more than a gift, toward a moment of pride. The bell above the door at Hollingsworth & Sons gave off a crisp chime as she entered. And that's where the story begins. But not in the way it should have. Not in the way any teenager would hope. The second Skylar crossed the threshold, she felt it. The air wasn't cold. It wasn't warm either. It was tight. Heavy. Like the silence right before a storm. Everything inside gleamed. Dark hardwood floors polished to a mirror shine. Soft classical music playing from invisible speakers. Glass display cases glowing under perfect lighting. It was the kind of store where people speak in low tones and never laugh. Where glances replace greetings. Skylar paused just inside the door, instinctively straightening the hem of her flannel shirt and pushing her hood back off her curls. Her backpack slipped from one shoulder, and she adjusted it quickly, already feeling like it didn't belong here. Behind the main counter stood Cheryl Winslow, mid-60s, silver bob, pristine gray suit, and an air of practiced politeness that barely concealed judgment. She was finishing something on the computer, her glasses perched on the tip of her nose. But the moment she noticed Skylar, she stopped typing. Skylar offered a small, respectful smile. The kind her mom had taught her for unfamiliar places. Cheryl didn't return it. She didn't even nod. Skylar took a breath, turned slowly toward the bracelet display on the far side of the store. Same shelf. 3rd row from the bottom. Right where she remembered it. She crouched slightly, careful not to press her fingers against the glass, peering at the bracelet like it was a fragile piece of the past. Behind her, the atmosphere remained unchanged, elegant, polished, and quietly hostile. A white man in a peacoat stepped in behind her moments later. Cheryl's expression lit up instantly. "Welcome to Hollingsworth & Sons," she chimed warmly. "Let me know if you'd like assistance." He nodded, moved toward the tie section. Skylar, still crouched near the display, raised her hand slightly. "Excuse me," she said gently. "Could I see that bracelet, please?" Cheryl Winslow's smile faded the moment she turned to Skylar. Gone was the warmth she had shown seconds ago to the white man browsing cufflinks. She tilted her head slightly, her lips tightening just a touch. "Oh," she said. "Which one?" The tone wasn't curious. It was cautious. Skylar pointed carefully through the glass. "That one. Bottom shelf, with the hand-stitched band. On the wood stand." Cheryl stepped out from behind the counter slowly. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the hardwood. Sharp. Measured. Like a metronome counting down to something unseen. She moved with deliberate grace, unlocking the glass display with a key she kept on a retractable cord. But before she opened it, her eyes flicked to Skylar's backpack. "You can leave your bag near the front desk," Cheryl said flatly, not quite meeting Skylar's eyes. Skylar blinked. "Sorry?" "It's store policy," Cheryl replied, already turning the key in the lock. "Just to avoid bumping into displays. The space is tight." Skylar hesitated. She'd never heard of a store asking that. Still, she complied. She unzipped the front pocket halfway, pulling it open just enough to reveal the contents. Her library ID, a small notebook, 3 pens, and the envelope of savings tucked safely beside a paperback novel. "Just books. And my wallet," she said quietly. "I won't touch anything else, I promise." Cheryl didn't acknowledge the explanation. She just removed the bracelet using a pair of white gloves and placed it on a navy velvet mat atop the counter. Skylar stepped forward slowly. Her breath caught in her throat. Seeing it again this close made her heart flutter. It wasn't shiny or expensive, but it reminded her of something real. Something good. She looked up. "Do you know how much it is with tax?" Cheryl reached into the pocket of her suit and retrieved a slim calculator. $83, even, she said crisply. Skylar smiled. She pulled out her phone, tapping open the budgeting app she'd used religiously every night for 3 weeks. That's when Cheryl's expression changed just slightly. Her eyes narrowed. Her posture stiffened. Skylar noticed, but she tried to ignore it. She focused on the screen, $84.25. She exhaled. "Just enough. I think I'll take it," she said softly but with pride. Cheryl didn't move. Didn't reach for a gift bag. Didn't offer a receipt. Instead, her gaze shifted from the phone in Skylar's hand to the door. And suddenly, everything began to feel wrong. Cheryl didn't budge. She kept the bracelet on the mat between them but made no move toward the register. Her eyes narrowed further, and for a brief moment, Skylar wondered if she'd somehow broken a rule she didn't know existed. Then came the question. "Are you here with someone?" Cheryl asked, her voice stiff but low. Skylar looked up, puzzled. "No. It's just me." A pause. Cheryl's lips pressed together in a tight line. Then, without another word, she turned and began walking toward a narrow door behind the counter, still holding the bracelet. Skylar stayed frozen by the glass. She didn't know whether to follow, wait, or say something. The air in the store felt heavier now. The white man in the peacoat had already left, unnoticed. Now, it was just her. Just Skylar. And the silence. Behind the door, Cheryl picked up the phone. Her voice was low but precise, careful in its wording. "Yes, this is Cheryl Winslow at Hollingsworth & Sons in Lincoln Market Plaza. I have a teenage girl in the store. African American. Wearing a denim jacket, sneakers. She's been lingering around the accessory cases for a while. She's been on her phone a lot. Seems nervous. I'd like someone to stop by just to check things out. Just in case." Just in case. That was how she said it. Like she was doing a favor. Like suspicion needed no evidence, only instinct. The dispatcher confirmed. A unit would respond. Cheryl thanked her and hung up. Then she stepped back into the showroom as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just weaponized a phone call. Skylar was still standing near the bracelet display, quietly tracing the zipper on her jacket pocket, wondering why Cheryl hadn't returned. Something felt wrong. But she couldn't name it. Not yet. Cheryl returned with a strained smile. Sorry for the delay, she said as she placed the bracelet back on the counter. Skylar offered another polite nod. Before we ring it up, Cheryl continued, would you mind taking your hands out of your pockets? Skylar blinked. Sorry. Store policy. For security purposes. Skylar looked down. Her hands were tucked into the front of her jacket out of habit, not hiding anything. She slowly pulled them out and lifted them slightly, palms up. Okay. I'm not hiding anything. Cheryl gave a tight nod. Of course not. But something in her tone said she didn't believe it. And Skylar felt it like a slow burn crawling under her skin. Like she was being treated not as a customer, but as a suspect. Skylar tried to stay calm. She had the money. She knew she did. She pulled out her phone again, opening the budgeting app she'd used every night before bed. Every dollar recorded, every quarter counted. She had $84.25. Enough. A soft smile flickered across her face, brief, genuine. I think I'll take it, she said again, firmer this time. Still, Cheryl didn't move. Didn't reach for a bag. Didn't even look at the bracelet. Instead, her gaze drifted. From Skylar's phone. To her face. Then to the door. Something shifted in Cheryl's posture, almost imperceptibly. Skylar felt it. She wasn't sure how. But she suddenly didn't feel like a customer anymore. Cheryl gave a brief, clipped nod and murmured. I'll be right back. Just going to double-check something. She turned and disappeared into the back office once more. Skylar stood alone again. She fidgeted with her sleeve, unsure if she should wait or leave. Behind that closed door, Cheryl picked up the phone a second time. This is Cheryl Winslow at Hollingsworth & Sons on Colfax and Lincoln. I have a young black teenager here, female, denim jacket, backpack. She's been in front of the higher value displays for a while now. On her phone a lot. Looks uncertain. I'm not saying there's an issue, just I'd appreciate someone coming by. You know. Just in case. She never said, emergency. Never used words like thief or danger. Just the right amount of coded language to make something harmless sound suspicious. The dispatcher confirmed they'd send a unit. Cheryl hung up. Composed herself. Then stepped back into the store as if she hadn't just aimed a loaded accusation. Skylar was still waiting by the display, adjusting the strap of her backpack, chewing lightly on the inside of her cheek. She still didn't know what was coming. Sorry about the wait, Cheryl said, placing the bracelet back on the counter with her gloved hands. But before we move forward, could you take your hands completely out of your pockets? Skylar's brows drew together. Huh? Store policy. Security. Skylar blinked, confused, but obeyed. She raised both hands, palms out, her voice soft but clear. I'm not hiding anything. Cheryl nodded, too quickly. Of course not. But the tension in the room said otherwise. The bell above the door chimed again. But it wasn't another customer. It wasn't who Skylar was hoping for. Two uniformed police officers stepped inside. A man and a woman. Both with neutral expressions. Both walking with purpose. They didn't glance around. They didn't ask for clarification. They headed straight for Skylar. The male officer gave Cheryl a nod. "Ma'am?" Cheryl lowered her voice but made sure they heard. "Yes, that's her." Skylar's heart lurched. She blinked, confused. "Wait, what's going on?" The officers flanked her, not aggressively, but not casually either. They stood close enough to make her feel surrounded, as if she were being boxed in. "We received a call about suspicious behavior," the female officer said flatly. "Mind telling us what you're doing here?" Skylar's throat tightened. "What?" "I'm here to buy a bracelet. I've been saving for it for weeks." The male officer asked, "Do you have ID?" "I'm 15, she replied, her voice unsteady. He nodded slowly, glancing toward her pockets. "Do you have anything in them?" Skylar's cheeks flushed red. Her voice cracked. "No. I didn't take anything." The officer's hand hovered near his belt, not drawing his weapon, but resting near the cuffs. "We're just going to need you to step aside and empty your pockets, please." Skylar looked over at Cheryl. The woman didn't meet her eyes. Didn't say a word. This couldn't be happening. Not over a bracelet. Not over being in the wrong store, at the wrong time, wearing the wrong clothes, with the wrong skin. Skylar's fingers trembled as she reached for her phone. She didn't think. She opened her messages. Tapped on the most recent contact, Mom. She didn't even type. Just sent her location. Then one word, help. Across town, in a government building tucked behind layers of security and tinted glass, Monica Green was reviewing a case file when her phone buzzed. She glanced down. One ping. A single word, help. From Skylar. Location attached. Monica stood so fast her chair slammed against the wall. She didn't say a word to anyone as she crossed the office, swiping her badge, bypassing security like a storm rolling through. She moved with focus. With purpose. Not as a frantic mother. But as a woman trained to take control. Back at Hollingsworth and Sons, Skylar stood cornered. Officer Daniels, the taller one, gestured toward the side of the boutique. "Let's not make a scene. Just empty your pockets and we'll be done." Skylar's voice was barely above a whisper. "I didn't take anything." Her hands trembled as she reached into her front jacket pocket. She pulled out her phone, a folded library receipt, and $2.25 in quarters. That was it. She looked toward Cheryl again, hoping maybe this would be the moment the woman realized the mistake and said something. Anything. But Cheryl stayed silent. Arms crossed. Eyes lowered. The female officer Ramirez spoke this time. "Do you have a receipt for anything you purchased today?" "I didn't buy it yet," Skylar replied softly. "I just asked to see it. I have the money. You can count it." Ramirez looked toward Daniels. Daniels nodded. "Do you mind if we check your bag?" Skylar's voice cracked again. "Why?" "It's procedure." "No. I didn't take anything." "She still has the bracelet behind the counter." Daniels shifted slightly. His hand moved closer to the walkie on his chest. His jaw tensed, a storm brewing just behind the calm expression. "I'm not going to ask again." Skylar's breath caught in her throat. Her knees felt weak. Her eyes stung. But she refused to cry. Not here. Not like this. And then. Ding. The bell above the boutique door rang again. Footsteps followed. Heels sharp, deliberate. A woman entered. Composed. Unshaken. Her navy blazer was unbuttoned just enough to reveal a badge clipped to her belt. Monica Green. Supervisory Special Agent, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Her eyes locked onto her daughter. No panic. No shouting. Just one word. Skylar. The girl turned, relief flooding her face. Mom. Daniels turned halfway, clearly confused. Ramirez froze. Monica stepped forward, calm, but unmovable. She placed herself between her daughter and the officers without raising her voice. I received a distress message from my daughter. She's being detained in a store by 2 armed officers. Someone want to explain why? Daniels cleared his throat. We got a report about suspicious behavior. She's 15, Monica interrupted, her voice still low but sharp as glass. She walked into a store. Asked about a bracelet. And now your hand is hovering near your cuffs? Ramirez tried to recover. Ma'am, we didn't detain her. We were just asking questions. While flanking her like she's a threat? Without a parent present? Without probable cause? Ramirez exhaled. And, you are? Monica reached into her inner jacket pocket, pulled out her credentials, and held them open with steady fingers. Supervisory Special Agent Monica Green, FBI. That girl is my daughter. The room fell still. Even the jazz playing overhead seemed to fade. Daniels looked like someone had just unplugged him from reality. Ramirez instinctively stepped back. Behind the counter, Cheryl Winslow's stiffened fingers frozen mid-movement over the glass. Monica's attention never left the officers. Did they touch you? She asked Skylar without breaking eye contact. Skylar shook her head. No, but they were about to search my bag. Monica nodded once. Then turned back to face the officers, her expression unreadable, her presence undeniable. The sun had dipped lower behind the buildings as Skylar and Monica walked side by side down Colfax Avenue. Neither of them spoke at first. The city hummed around them, cars, footsteps, the faint sound of music from a cafe nearby. But between them, it was silent. Skylar stayed a few steps ahead, arms stiff at her sides, her expression unreadable. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She just walked. Monica let her. Sometimes, silence said more than comfort ever could. 2 blocks later, Skylar stopped. They stood in front of a shuttered frozen yogurt shop one Skylar used to visit after school. The windows were dark now. Chairs stacked upside down on tables. A little "For Lease" sign hanging crookedly inside the glass. But for Skylar, the memories still flickered behind those windows. She leaned against the brick wall, letting the cold sink into her back. Then, finally, her voice cracked through the stillness. I didn't do anything. It came out soft. But sharp. A blade wrapped in breath. Monica stepped closer. I know. They looked at me like I was going to steal something. Like I was lying just by standing there. Monica nodded. I know that look. They didn't even ask her anything, Skylar continued, her voice picking up. They just came straight to me. She paused. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Smile more? Take off my hood? Dress fancier? Be less me? Monica didn't answer right away. Not because she didn't have something to say. But because she didn't want to hand her daughter another burden disguised as wisdom. Finally, she said, there's nothing you could have done differently. That part? That part isn't on you. Skylar bit the inside of her cheek. Folded her arms. Stared down at her sneakers. Then what's the point, she asked. What's the point of saving, being polite, staying out of trouble? If it doesn't change how people treat me? Monica looked away for a moment up at the darkening sky, like searching for a way to shield her daughter from a truth she'd had to carry her entire life. Then she turned back, her voice steady. The point is you still do it. You still save. You still walk into that store. You still ask about the bracelet. You still hold your head high and speak clearly. Because you don't let someone else's ignorance decide how small you're allowed to be. Skylar's eyes shimmered, and this time, she didn't try to stop the tears. I hate that this is normal, she whispered. It shouldn't be, Monica replied gently. But until it isn't, you be strong enough to walk through it. And bold enough to make them uncomfortable with how sure of yourself you are. They stood like that for a while. Not mother and daughter anymore. But two black women, one seasoned by the storm, one just beginning to step into it. Monica pulled out her phone. Opened her contacts. Tapped a number. When the line connected, her voice dropped into something cold and exact. Yes. Officer Daniels and Officer Ramirez. Incident at Hollingsworth and Sons. I want body cam footage pulled immediately. Before anything gets accidentally erased. She hung up. Skylar turned toward her, wiping her face with the back of her sleeve. Let me guess. Paperwork? Monica gave the faintest smile. I'm going to do a whole lot more than that. Skylar let out a single dry laugh. Can we just go home? Monica nodded. Yeah. But not before we stop somewhere first. Skylar sighed. Where? You'll see. They walked another block before turning onto a quieter street. Less polished. Less curated. But somehow, more human. Monica stopped in front of a small storefront sandwiched between a donut shop and a dry cleaner. The sign above the door read, Mason's Jewelry, family owned since 1971. Skylar glanced up at her mom. This isn't, I know, Monica interrupted. But I think this is exactly where we need to be. They stepped inside. A soft bell jingled, not sharp like the one at Hollingsworth, but welcoming. The air smelled like old wood, brass polish, and a hint of lavender. The floor creaked when they walked. Behind the counter stood an older black woman, wearing a mustard cardigan and glasses that slid down her nose every few seconds. She looked up and smiled instantly. Well, hey there, she said, voice warm and familiar. What can I help you fine ladies with today? Monica returned the smile. We're looking for a silver bracelet. Something simple. My daughter's been saving up for a gift. The woman stepped out from behind the counter. Well then, she said, let's find her something worth saving for. She opened a wooden display case with worn hinges and soft green felt lining. The pieces inside weren't flashy. No brand names. No spotlights. Just handcrafted items arranged with care. Skylar stepped forward slowly, scanning the pieces. Her fingers unclenched. Her shoulders, still tense from earlier, began to drop, just slightly. She saw it. A simple sterling silver bracelet with a tiny heart charm near the clasp. Not identical to the one from Hollingsworth. Better. This one felt right. The woman noticed. You like that one? Skylar nodded. Yeah. I think my grandpa will, too. The woman smiled wider. Well, then we'll make sure he gets it. She took the bracelet out gently and placed it in Skylar's hands like it was something sacred. Skylar pulled out her folded bills, still crinkled from being gripped so tightly, and laid them on the counter. The woman counted it with care, then reached into a drawer and pulled out a simple brown box tied with a string. No charge for wrapping, she said with a wink. Some things don't need a barcode to be special. Skylar smiled. Not wide. But real. She clutched the tiny box in both hands as she and her mom stepped back outside. Across town, back at Hollingsworth and Sons, a single silver bracelet still sat behind a glass case. Unbought. Untouched. Unwanted. And for the first time since it had been displayed, it looked lonelier than ever. Later that evening, Skylar sat cross-legged on the living room floor, the lights dimmed and quiet filling the space like a soft blanket. In her lap rested the tiny brown box from Mason's Jewelry, still tied with its simple string. She hadn't opened it yet. She just ran her fingers along the edges of the box. Not out of hesitation, but reverence. Behind her, Monica sat on the couch, reviewing a file on her tablet. But her eyes weren't on the screen. They were on her daughter. Not in fear. Not in worry. But in something deeper. Something quieter. Pride, the kind of pride that doesn't always say, "I'm proud of you." But instead whispers, "I see you. I know you. I believe you." Skylar finally spoke, her voice barely above a murmur. "I picked the one with the little heart charm." Monica smiled gently. "Grandpa's going to love that." Skylar turned slightly, looking over her shoulder. "Do you think people like that woman at the store ever change?" Monica set the tablet down and leaned forward. "Some do. Not all. But when you call something what it is, when you make people sit in their silence, it forces them to think harder the next time." Skylar stared at the box again. "I didn't like how it made me feel." "You weren't supposed to." A pause. Then Skylar whispered, "I'm still mad." Monica nodded. "That's okay. Be mad. Just don't let it turn you into something you're not." The room fell silent again. But it wasn't heavy this time. It was real. Settled. Understood. Finally, Skylar opened the box. Inside lay the silver bracelet. Simple. Honest. Unapologetic. Like her. She picked it up, felt the cool metal between her fingers. And she smiled. It wasn't wide. It wasn't forced, but it was real, because that bracelet wasn't just a gift for her grandfather anymore. It was a reminder that her worth was never up for debate. That doing the right thing might not feel good right away, but it matters. And that sometimes, the most powerful act of resistance is simply refusing to shrink.